one classroom at a time. This is the Champions Podcast. Let the journey begin. Welcome to the Champions Podcast, the show where we celebrate the educators who are changing the game in the world of learning. Champions Podcast will take you on a journey through the inspiring stories of educators who teach with a mission, leaving an indelible mark on their schools and the lives of their students. Subscribe now, and together, let's celebrate the educators who are shaping the future, one classroom at a time.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from where you are watching. Today, we count this as a crossover episode where I believe that you heard of this podcast before. You heard of this group before called the Hive Educator. If you are in Malaysia, if you have not from Malaysia, I believe that they also welcome you. So I invite the coordinator behind Hive Educator group, Madam Auzellea. Without further ado, I will only give a little bit of information about her. She's one wonderful lady that have lots of expertise and have lots of work. And I think I will let her herself introduce to you. So welcome, Madam Auzellea, to Champion Podcast.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind, can you share a bit about your background so our audience know you, and how does that shape your podcast content moving forward? Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name is Auzellea, Kristin Mozihim, but my students and my colleagues, they call me Madam Zell. Okay, and my colleagues and friends, they call me Zell, right? And then I'm an English teacher. I've been teaching for 9 years now, and I'm based in Sabah, Malaysia. So apart from teaching, I am also involved in advocacy, mostly in the advocacy scene in Sabah, especially on youth civic engagement, youth empowerment, and that is how I extend my advocacy to my students, because they are youths and they need to be empowered, because in the future they will be voting, right? So they need to have that realization of what is going on in their constituency, identifying problems, solving them, providing solutions. Yeah, so in my teaching, that is what I go for, okay, most of the time. And then I'm currently doing a master's in administrative science and policy studies. Yeah, and maybe we can get into that why I'm doing that field, but I'm currently teaching as a teacher in a school. Okay, as actually there's a connection, but later we'll get into that. Yeah.
So can you tell us how do you get into this podcasting on this Hive Educator? But I believe that before we go into this podcast, we start from Hive Educator first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so a bit about Hive Educators. So I'm the coordinator of Hive Educators. So behind Hive Educators, there are a few teachers behind this. Okay, it's not only me. So we teach primary school, secondary school, okay, and most of us, we come from Sabah, but there are also non-Sabahan members in our organization. So this is actually a registered organization. Yeah, we've registered this under ROS, and it's been a year now. And we focus mostly on articles written by teachers, because through articles they can say their opinions, whether on practice, policy, or pedagogy. So a lot of these teachers, they have a lot of ideas, ideas on education, opinions on education. So we center their voices through those articles that we publish every week, every Friday. Yeah. Okay. And so far, yeah, there's been a lot of submissions, and it's great to see that a lot of teachers are very enthusiastic to express their opinions on those articles. Firstly, our organization, we mainly focus on articles, and then we move forward to bringing more content. For example, podcasting. Okay, podcasting. That is an idea That is an idea that came about after a few months of initiating the article submissions from teachers. So I'm behind those podcasts. I'm basically the producer and the editor and the host for that podcast. So one of the main things in that podcast is some teachers, they do not like, not all teachers like to write, but many teachers, they like to speak. Okay, so we provide that platform for them to speak on their teaching ideas or just like expressing their opinions on education. All right, so it's like giving two modes of expressing their thoughts on education by centering teacher voices. So the main important thing here is to center teacher voices to those two platforms, either through articles or podcasts. And also, when most of the time, sometimes I invite those teachers because I'm on social media often, but I'm on social media because I want to discover these teachers who have amazing pedagogical skills, innovative curriculum, and then also if there are some teachers that are very opinionated on certain things happening in education. So I invite them to speak on that podcast. And at the same time, there are also teachers who approach us and ask whether they themselves be on the podcast just to share their opinions. Yeah. So for the podcast, we don't do it every week. It's just at least once a month. We release one episode a month. And also not only teachers, but we want to highlight students as well, because teachers, we are teaching that, therefore we need to also because teachers, they have some teachers, they have projects that they do and that will impact the students. So especially innovative projects. So it's great that to have student voices on board in the podcast, so that the people who are listening to us, who are following us, they know that, okay, so these teachers, they are also empowering the students, because that is what teachers should do. Yeah, one of the things that teachers should do. Yeah. Okay, what else?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Continue.
okay. All right. Another one is for Hive, we also give out book recommendations every month, because basically, Hive educators, we encourage teachers to think. I'm not saying that they don't think at all, but what I mean is to explore different perspectives through books, especially on education. Yeah, and then and also one more thing, we also do professional development programs. So we always do them online. We invite local teachers and also teachers from overseas. So our founder, he has a lot of connections overseas. So that is why he can invite those teachers to give workshops or talks to Malaysian teachers. Yeah, so we have done quite a few for the past year. And recently we did one, but we did not invite teacher. We did not invite a teacher. We invited a social entrepreneur, but we invite her so that she can share about her organization, how her organization can help teachers to help students to be entrepreneurial. Basically. So it's like linking private and public, or non-education to education domain sort of thing. We would like to have that. We want to connect every domain to education, because we cannot just see one thing. We cannot just see everything only in one domain, which is education. We need to connect everything as well. Yeah. So that's it. That's all about Hive. Yeah.
All right. So talking about podcast, right? I know that it birthed from article writing to podcast. So about that, moving forward, do Hive Educator plan to cancel anything from the podcast, or you actually need pick the theme and a subject for each episode? Because I believe censorship also happen in article and also in podcast. So what's the stand from Hive Educator on this thing? I believe that most teachers that later on after watching this episode might want to join, but they're afraid that their voice is being changed. So will that happen for Hive Educator, or how? Will there be any filtration happening?
Okay, yeah, I believe this is one of the concerns, Daya. Right. So for articles, as long as when you write articles, you must cite, right, and your facts must be correct. So whatever you write, just make sure there are citations. It's academic, all right, and then you need to check the facts. Apart from that, as long as you don't touch on sensitive issues like the 3R, religion, race, royalty. Yeah. And also some people will say that you cannot touch on politics when you write these articles. But then again, when the word, this is one issue. The word politics, it has a negative connotation whenever we talk about it. But actually, everything around us is actually political. If you really look at it, like for education, it is education policies. They are political. Political as in there are decision making going on. There's decision making process going on. That is the meaning of political. It's not partisan politics. Okay, so for the listeners out there, please distinguish between politics or partisan politics. So, for example, if for example, this has never happened before, but I'm just going to give you an example of a scenario. If there is a teacher or someone wanting to submit an article and touching on partisan politics, that one we definitely will reject lah, unless I mentioned just now that I'm doing masters in administrative science and policy studies, right? So this is where when you want to write about your stance and it involves a governance system or policies, therefore you need to know which framework you are using, because since I'm studying that, it doesn't seem to be something controversial or something contentious. The important thing is you have to have a framework when you try to elaborate on what you think about the politics side. If you want to connect it to what's happening in education, that is fine as long as there is a framework, because that is what my supervisor said, my lecturer said. Yeah, all right. So, and that is correct, because when you write a thesis, you need to follow that kind of pattern when you write. So it's the same for those who want to submit. You can you can write what you think about the policies, but then make sure that it's not the language. It needs to be objective. It cannot be emotional, because when you write, there are sometimes those who write emotionally, and we prefer the articles that are objective sounding and academic. Okay, so we prefer those. So there is a distinction here that we need to make. You want to talk about in relating to politics, as in the decision making process. That is fine, because I do that too. That is an interesting topic to talk about. Especially for teachers, we should know what is going on, right? We cannot be just focusing on in the classroom, but we need to know what is going on in the country, and that involves policies and politics. So, but when we talk about them, it needs to be based on a proper framework, facts, and not be emotional about it, especially when you write and also when you speak. Yeah. So that is how that is how whenever we review stuff, and also for the podcast, we need to make sure that they are based on what I said earlier. Yeah.
All right. So going back to podcast again, from article, I believe that our audience also want to know, let's say if I didn't successfully enter the article and I'm not a well-known teacher, can I still be on the podcast for Hive Educator? Because it's quite famous in Sabah, but not yet in Malaysia. So what's your say on this as a coordinator behind this? Yeah. Give them
Yeah, actually, we welcome every teacher. It doesn't matter whether they've won awards, whether they're in influencer or not, whether they always win like pertandingan inovasi. It doesn't matter as long as you're a teacher, you have an idea to share to everyone, to teachers especially. Then you are most welcome to be on the podcast and share. So because most of the speakers, I don't invite them because they have awards. I invite them because they have ideas to share, and that is the most important thing. Ideas to share to the public, to the teachers, and also to show the public, especially those who are not in education, to know that okay, we have teachers who have this kind of thoughts. They are not only the ones teaching in the classroom, but they can also connect everything what is going on to education. For example, yeah, the ideas are the most important part.
All right, I like that part. Okay, where you have educator podcast see ideas as important. Hence, my next question related to this is, what role do you think that Hive Educator play in building out the community that Hive Educator bring in to the teachers and all vice versa? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the kind of stuff that we try to how to say so that people would view teachers as teachers who are intellectuals. Yeah, teachers as intellectuals. That is one of our objective. Okay, and also so through those writing, they can see that okay, these teachers, they have a lot of ideas. They can perhaps in their writings they can challenge the norm. Okay, and also, but when you challenge the norm, of course, you need to be backed up with facts and frameworks, like I said earlier. Okay, and then so it's a community. We also want to build a community of writing teachers, because many teachers, I noticed that some teachers, they are introverted, they are not used to speaking in public, in conferences, they're not used to that. So we provide them so this platform actually provides them that opportunity to express their opinions, because for introverts mostly, they prefer to express their ideas in writing. So this actually helps the teachers who are actually shy, introverted, because there was one teacher who submitted her article, and we gave them a feedback form, and she replied in that feedback form. She said, okay, this is a perfect platform for me because I'm a shy teacher. Yeah, she said something like that. So I think one of what we provide is those kinds of things lah. Yeah.
Okay, talking about giving voices to the introverted teachers. As a teacher myself, I also want to know, going forward in 2024, will you plan any online workshop for teachers that want to join, but we are too far from Sabah. Even when I'm at your south of Borneo, I want to go to Sabah. Also take a few hours or even one flight to go over. Will you open classes for us to join? And how are we going to go about? Because I believe that everyone need this kind of LDP. Everyone is also collecting their SPLKPN. Will you open this kind of workshop for us? Yes,
Oh, you mean workshop for writing?
of course.
Yeah. We actually one of our members have actually expressed that kind of idea. He said that we should have a writing workshop for teachers. For basically like writing articles, and then it's not a journal article to be published on journals, academic journals. It's just for how to organize your thoughts, organize your ideas through writing. That's basically what is the workshop will be. We do plan to have that in the future, hopefully. Yeah, and yes, it will be open to everyone. In fact, we open our programs to international teachers as well. Yeah, so everybody can join and collect your SPL KPM. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay. So now I want to bring you back to your master. Why as an English teacher you end up going to the policy path? Because like the old all how to say, like those traditional lecturer will tell us that you should take the path that similar to your degree, but you go against that flow, which made you kind of sort of as special as my senior. Yeah, currently
Okay.
senior from ITG. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Fine
Yeah.
to share.
Okay. Yeah. I do believe some people they have the same question. So in my undergrad I took a Bachelor of Education in TESOL. All right, and now I'm doing a master's in administrative science and policy studies. So on the surface, when you look at these two programs, especially based on their names, they're very unrelated on the surface. But when you look deep into them, especially when I've been teaching for 9 years now, and I've been exposed to, especially because I'm also involved in advocacy scene in Sabah. So I'm exposed to basically politics, not partisan politics, okay, politics in general, okay, of any social issues going on, civic issues, and also I'm also interested in how education is influenced by politics as in policies lah. Yeah. So okay, how do I say this? And also because there is a, for us Borneans, Saban, Saraukans, there's the MA63, right? All right. So MA63, but I'm not going to get into MA63. I'm just going to talk about like in education part, because there's actually a technical committee from what I read. Okay, it was released in November. That report was released in November. There's a technical committee, okay, has already been established for the decentralization of education and health. So I'm gonna talk about the education part. So it's like I'm quite interested to look into, like for example, can decentralization facilitate education equity in Sabah, for example, because in Sabah we have a lot of, if you look in the news, education is always one of the main issues, okay? But then again, in my opinion, sometimes it's not, you cannot just depend on the education sector. You have to also depend on other ministries, departments, and sectors to help facilitate education equity, right? So it's there's an interministerial relationship. There should be an interministerial partnership going on when it comes to eradicating education inequity, basically, right? So that is what I'm interested in doing, masters in administrative science and policy studies. But my research is actually on language policy. So there is a relation. I took English language, and now I'm researching language policy, but from the perspective of public policy, not necessarily on education only. Because in my thesis that I'm currently trying to finish up is it has, apart from education domain, there are other domains as well. Yeah, I'm actually doing researching Kadazan Dusun language. Sorry, the title is Policy Entrepreneurs in Language Policy, the case for Kadazan Dusun language in Sabah. So for the Kadazan Dusun language, we have some of the schools in Sabah, they have that elective. Some students, they have already taken that. So I was interested in knowing who are the people who invested in their time, their energy, so that the subjects will be improved, and what were the strategies, and also what were the actions being done to have the subject finally to be in the school, and how does the language, how will the language sustain in Sabah, because we don't want it to be there's an issue here that we have decreasing number of Kadazan Dusun language speakers. So that is the one of the issue. Yeah. So what I'm saying here is in my thesis I also look at education, but I'm not only looking at education, but there are other domains as well. So this goes back to what I said earlier. Everything, when you want to anything that you want to solve in education, there must be other ministries. We have to look into other ministries, departments, or sectors on how are they going to help to reduce education equity. Yeah, so that's basically that's why I took administrative science and policy studies to because I'm also a very curious person. I wanted to know how does education relate into all of this, and how do the other domains also help in facilitating whatever is being done through education. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Interesting. So based on what you are doing, do you believe that kada dusun in Sabah should be given more voice in all platforms because the number are reducing and so on, and the policy doesn't seem to support that. What is your point on this? And will you bring in those teachers onto your podcast so that more listener will get to know what really happened, like the current news if because of the viral video we don't know the road at Sabah is very bad. I believe that you also saw that video also. I believe all of our audience also saw that viral video also. So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So I do plan on inviting a few teachers, because in my research one of the respondents were teachers. Yeah. So because I want to know what are they doing in terms of how they are sustaining the Kadazan Dusun language in education in schools. Yeah. So yes, I do plan on inviting one of the teachers that I saw on social media, because I see him as an individual that's quite active. I see him on TikTok. He's a Kadazan Dusun language teacher. So I do want to invite him onto the podcast in the future. I actually have plans. Yeah, I've already scouted a few of the teachers. Yeah. And then, okay. Oh yeah, there was another question before that. So for that one, I think from my research, I think it's the budget that support Kadazan Dusun language programs, not only in schools but also outside of schools, like in cultural events. That is also one thing, So it's basically, we have like my research is on policy entrepreneurs, so they're basically leaders who are actually advocating and also investing the energy and time to sustain the Kadazan Dusun language in Sabah and in each of their domains, like the media, the education, and then in entertainment, in NGO, in religion as well. So there needs to be an adequate budget, so that they need to have those programs. So that they can continue those programs. Yeah, so that it will be sustaining. If there are no programs, if there are no budget, then you only have ideas. You have the people behind. You have the ideas. We don't have the budget or the resources. Then most of the time, those programs will not be cannot be implemented. So one of the issue is budgeting as well. Yeah, resource allocation. Yeah.
So listener, if you are listening, remember to subscribe to Hive Educator podcast to show your support to our Sabahan teachers here. So now, going on to the next question, what challenges do you think you will face moving forward with your podcast? Because I know it's not an easy feat, and yeah, you have more episodes than me. What's your vision going forward that you want to let your viewer know? And how do you plan to overcome it? Like what you said just now, budget. I believe that Hive Educator as a whole, as a community, as well as the podcast, need some budget so forward, right? So how do you guys plan to handle it?
Yeah.
It's
So
not cheap.
with regards to the podcast, actually I'm grateful because whenever I record the podcast, I use my KPM account, so it's free. It's free to record, free to use, and you have the record feature there. So there's no budgeting involved. Yeah, but the challenge is time. Yeah, time is a constraint at times. So that is one of the challenges. In terms of topics as well, sometimes for me, I try to look for topics, but I'm grateful that I have friends who are also, they have this kind of mindset or a very wide perspective on education, so they can suggest to me what kind of topics that we can talk about in the podcast. And also they have the network that I don't have access to, so that I can just ask them, okay, can they be on this podcast, and those kinds of things. Yeah, so one of the challenges is not much on budget, it's just ideas, and also the people. But I'm also grateful that there are teachers who want to invite themselves into the podcast, and we welcome that. Yeah.
All right. Can you share specific learning moment that have influenced you during the podcast episode? Because I believe that some of the guests that you invite in did teach you something, like how you have teach me in this podcast episode. Yeah, if you don't mind sharing.
You mean a learning moment where I sorry, how a moment that I learned something lah when I did the podcast.
Yes, so far.
Yeah. Actually, okay, there's a lot actually, because I was the one who was asking the questions. So there have been a lot of learning moments that happen. But I think one of the topics that I really liked was the one on critical literacy. Yeah, so that was episode 13, I think. Yeah, episode 13. So critical literacy, I really liked that episode, and because it's very difficult for me to look for other teachers who actually know of this concept explicitly. Yeah. Because, like I said earlier, one of my passion in teaching is for youth empowerment, civic youth empowerment, using having education as a platform to do that. And so that is how critical literacy manifests. But at that time when I did that podcast, I did not know of the concept of critical literacy. I know critical pedagogy. That is another one that is related, but I did not know critical literacy. So when he said that, oh, what I'm doing is actually critical literacy, because I've known him, we follow each other on Facebook, and I always share my teaching, my innovations on Facebook. At that time, I don't have Facebook currently though. So yeah, so and so that was the time that I said that I thought that, oh, okay, so this is actually what I'm doing is critical literacy. So before I did that podcast, I looked through what is critical literacy, and perhaps the description is different from, not different, but it's sort of a bit different than critical pedagogy. For critical pedagogy, for those of you who know of Paulo Freire, okay, the Brazilian educator, he was the father of that idea. I read his book, so the terminologies that he used was different than how critical literacy was explained online. So that was why I thought, okay, maybe this is not the same, maybe the same. I was not sure. But then when I went on that, I interviewed him talking about that. So I thought, oh, okay, yeah. So it's more or less the same. Because he did his master's on that. So he has more knowledge on that. So I was grateful for inviting him on that podcast to share to the public lah.
As a Sabahan yourself, right? You're talking about, since you are also onto critical literacy, right? Do you believe that we have too much access of technology for our kids, or currently we are doing not enough? I mean, how to put it in a much more simpler way. Do you think that technology in the classroom is too access currently, or is too little, or we shouldn't have it at all because of technology? Our current generation, when we talk about literacy, critical literacy, is zero. What is your thinking on this?
I think technology is great in facilitating critical literacy, because they can save time in going to the library, especially if the school if the library is very far from their school and their neighborhood location. So I think technology is great in facilitating that, because previously I just completed the project actually with my students. So it's on sustainable town planning, and most of the time they look for information. It was a PBL project, by the way, and it's critical literacy or critical pedagogy is integrated into that. So they envision an alternative situation for their town in terms of sustainability, like green spaces, energy efficiency, waste management, and all that. So they envision an alternative image of their town. So, but when they do that, they look for information online, and then they actually use technology to produce their projects. Yeah, like maps. One of the groups, they use maps, and they only use the apps in their phones to do it. For me, I cannot do any work on the phone. I need to be in front of the computer. But for my students, they can do it only by using their phones. They color the map, they type in the map using their phones. And then another group, they did video editing, because one of the students in that group, he actually has a YouTube channel. He likes to create skits. So I told him, why don't you create a skit for this project? Yeah, and so he did. And then one of them, they created a podcast. Yeah, a podcast. I suggested to them, why don't you talk about this issue in the form of podcast? So they use their phones. That is also technology. They just record, right? Yeah. And then what else? Yeah, videos, maps, podcasting. Yeah. So those are basically technology, right? So so in conclusion, technology can facilitate in students learning, and also to facilitate in critical pedagogy or any projects. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Talking about all of this, we talk about your episode and so on and so forth. How do you handle feedback from your audience, from your friends that sometimes have positive or negative feedback? How do you handle them? Or back to you. This question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I think in general, whatever comments that we receive, we need to take them positively, right? So, and also as for self improvement, right? So, and also for the improvement of the organization and also the podcast. So whatever comments that we receive, next time we do better lah. And also don't be so defensive, because our organization is actually very small. Okay, new, small, and we don't want to be popular. Popularity is not our main goal. It's just for us to help teachers, in terms of their professional development through article writing and podcasting, as well, and also the professional development courses that we organize from time to time, and also from the books that we suggest. So, like I said earlier, our main focus is to spread ideas, new ideas, innovative ideas through our organization lah. And also, I'm grateful because I have, our organization, we consist of very innovative individuals, passionate from all ages. Yeah, a few of our members, they are retiring soon, and some of them, they are still new, right? So, yeah, it's the passion and drive, and also the objective, thinking about the objective of the organization. Yeah.
Okay, and the next question is, because Champion Podcast got Indonesian and Singaporean listener, some might ask, hey, Madam Auzellea, I'm interested, but I'm from another country. Can I open another Hive Educator in my country? How can I do that? And what is the procedure to do that? How should they contact you? And if they want to start a Hive Educator in Southeast Asia, country in Southeast Asia. Madam Auzellea.
Oh, this is interesting. I've never thought of this. You mean like our organization opening a branch in another country, basically, right? Okay. We never thought of that. But if they do want to open another Hive Educator, I guess they could just contact us and see how we can, how I believe every country they have different education policies, and also what also the facilities and all that, the technological advancements. So I guess it will be sort of different, as long as the objectives are aligned, which is if they want to open up another Hive Educator, for example, in Singapore, then they also can, through the articles, center teacher voices through articles, podcasts, and organize professional development courses, and also suggest books. But of course, there needs to be a different group of teachers, and also the main, who's behind the Hive Educator should be teachers, but also there can be other people as well. I mean, who are in education, because our members, some of them they are in JPN, some of them they are in IAB, some are in KPM. Yeah. So as long as the objectives are aligned, like we focus on ideas, to spread ideas, education ideas, and also connecting them to other domains as in, like for the podcast, we did look into urban planning, urban planning, connecting that to education, and we also looked at like federalism, connecting that to education, politics now basically. So we need the kind of mindset that the members should have is to have a very intersectional perspective on education. It should not only be on what is happening in the classroom, like teaching basically, but that is one of the things that we promote lah. Yeah. Yes, but that is a very interesting question. Actually, I'm not sure how to really answer that. But I do believe that you mentioned about Singapore, right? I do believe they have a teacher-led organization for English. I followed one of the Instagram, and also I know that organization through a book that I read. So yeah, I do believe they have like a teacher-led organization in Singapore. I'm not sure for other countries like Philippines or Indonesia. I'm not quite sure. But but actually they don't really have to use the brand Hive Educators. They could just use another name, but they have the same thing. It's just that they are based in a different country. I mean, it's fine. Yeah, they can take inspiration from Hive Educators, for example, and then they want to do it in their own country. So it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so listener from those countries, you have heard that. So yeah, that's the way if you want to either start your own or following what Hive Educator is doing. So without further ado, before we wrap up, is there any advice you want to share with our audience about Hive Educator, or any advice that you want to tell to our newly posted teacher and so on? Yeah, I give you the time, 5 minutes to end this podcast. And Madam Auzellea.
Yeah. Okay. So for the teachers who are listening, let me just promote Hive Educators now. So you are welcome to send in articles. You can follow us on Instagram. We are Hive Educators on Instagram, and then our website is hive-educators.org. www.hive-educators.org, and there is a submission guideline there. You can just read through, and then you can submit your articles. And also, if you want to be featured on our podcast, just to share your ideas, connecting whatever domain to education or just pedagogy, you can contact us. And yeah, that is it. And also for the new teachers, my advice is you need to network with teachers from outside your school. You follow inspiring teachers online. Okay, just Google. Maybe you can. I think you can go directly to Malaysia Teacher Prize website if you've heard of it. It's organized by Pemimpin JSL. There are a lot of inspiring teachers there. And then from there you just browse their names, you Google their names, and you follow them. You follow them on their social media pages. They always share about their innovative practices in the classroom. And also I'll suggest you to follow inspiring teachers so that you also can be inspired to do the same, so that you don't get demotivated, because there are a lot of challenges because you are still new in the industry. So you can get inspiration from all these teachers, and also join conferences, education conferences as participants. You can also be presenters, but I think if you join in conferences as participants first, you can learn a lot, and then in the future you can be a presenter. You share your innovative practices. Yeah, that's it.
So that's all from today's special crossover episode. That's from me, Jigushon. Adios.
Bye.